The charming village of Cooperstown, New York, is synonymous with baseball. It's home to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Doubleday Field, considered to be the site of the first baseball game in history, played in 1839. But on the outskirts of town is an institution that honors a very different part of American culture, the Fenimore Art Museum. Built on the site of novelist James Fenimore Cooper's former home, the museum celebrates the history of New York State. The collection includes a suit that once belonged to the author himself, Native American masks from the 1890s, and a bust of President Thomas Jefferson dating back to 1825. But hidden among these treasures is a fragile item with an extraordinary story to tell.
The object is about 12 inches wide by about 8 inches tall. It's made of a weathered paper and decorated with an elegant calligraphy font.
This elegant document is intrinsically linked to America's most iconic landmark.
This item resulted from one man's determination to bring his art to the world on an epic scale.
The story begins in Egypt in 1867. The Suez Canal, perhaps the most ambitious engineering project in human history to date, is almost complete. Spanning more than 100 miles, the waterway will link the Mediterranean and Red Seas.
This was a big deal. Instead of going around the entire continent of Africa, you could just take this canal. You would have been able to cut weeks, possibly months, out of your travels.
To mark the historic occasion, the Egyptian government wants to erect a monumental structure at the canal's entrance at Port Said.
They wanted a gorgeous-looking lighthouse, an internationally known, unique landmark.
So they issue a proclamation inviting architects and artists from around the world to submit proposals for a suitable monument. One man who takes up the challenge is 33-year-old French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi.
Bartholdi was a very talented man. He just hadn't done anything important to that point yet, and he really wanted to make his mark on the world.
The ambitious artist envisions more than a mundane lighthouse. Instead, he draws his inspiration from one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A massive statue of a male figure holding a beacon with a crown of fire on its head. The Colossus of Rhodes. Erected in the year 280 BC, the gigantic figure stood for 54 years on the Greek island of Rhodes, until it was destroyed by an earthquake. Bartholdi thinks a new and updated figure would be the ideal monument to stand at the entrance of the Suez Canal.
Bartholdi was moved by the Colossus of Rhodes, and he wanted to rebuild this in his own way.
The artist proposes raising a 130-foot statue of a veiled Egyptian woman holding a torch above her head. He names it Egypt Bringing the Light to Asia.
When Bartholdi finished his design, he thought he hit a home run.
Later that year, Bartholdi presents his plans to Egyptian officials, but they do not share his enthusiasm.
They wanted something more traditional, and the statue of the Arab woman was anything but traditional.
The government rejects Bartholdi's grand design and opts instead for a conventional lighthouse at Port Said.
He was devastated. He just spent years working on this design, and they just cast it aside.
Bartholdi, for his part, returns to France a broken man. But little does he know, his majestic creation is about to find a new home on a distant shore. In 1870, the French government makes an historic announcement. To commemorate their country's support for the American Revolution, they wish to present the United States with a gift, a monumental symbol of democracy and freedom. All they need is a good design. Bartholdi immediately recalls his rejected concept for the Suez Canal.
This was Bartholdi's chance to resurrect his project that he had put so much time into, and he was not going to let it slip away.
Bartholdi makes some tweaks to his original proposal. Instead of a veiled Egyptian woman, he gives his new figure a face. On her head, he places a magnificent crown. And in her left hand, she carries a tablet bearing the date of American independence, July 4th, 1776. This time, he names the statue Liberty, Enlightening the World.
He wanted her to represent the freedom of the country, the beacon of hope, and he wanted to reflect what America stood for.
In 1875, Bartholdi presents his idea to French officials, who are rapturous in their approval.
Bartholdi was thrilled.
Constructed in France, the statue is shipped to America in 350 separate pieces and reassembled in New York Harbor. Finally, on October 28, 1886, after 10 years of work, Bartholdi stands alongside U.S. President Grover Cleveland in New York as Liberty Enlightening the World is unveiled before 1 million spectators.
It was enormous in all of its grandeur, and it was beautiful, and it was colossal.
Eventually, Bartholdi's colossal creation becomes known to people around the world as the Statue of Liberty. Today, this 1886 invitation to the dedication of the Statue of Liberty is on display at the Fenimore Art Museum in Cooperstown, New York. It recalls a determined artist and the unlikely origins of an American icon.